A scale no bigger than a thumbnail lies on the forest floor. It is dark, slightly curved, tapering to a soft point. Rain has washed it clean. Pick it up, and it feels exactly like a fingernail, because that is essentially what it is. And somewhere ahead in the undergrowth, several hundred more of them are moving through the dark, overlapping like roof tiles, carried on the back of an animal almost nobody has ever seen. This is the pangolin. It is the most trafficked wild mammal on Earth. And if you stopped 100 people on the street, most of them could not tell you what one is. Today, we're going to fix that. Because this animal is stranger, older, and tougher than almost anything else walking around. And the reason you've never heard of it is the same reason it's disappearing. Let's start with the armor, because it's genuinely unique. Pangolins are the only mammals on the planet covered in true scales, not bony plates like an armadillo. Actual scales made of keratin, the same protein as your fingernails, your hair, and a rhino's horn. Those scales grow throughout the animal's life and wear down as it burrows and pushes through vegetation. They overlap in rows, they're sharp along the edges, and they cover almost the entire body except the soft underside and face. And when a pangolin is threatened, it does something that has worked flawlessly for a very long time. It tucks its head under its tail and rolls into a tight ball. That's where the name comes from, incidentally. It traces back to a Malay word meaning something like one that rolls up. In that position, the animal is essentially a sphere of armored edges with nothing exposed. And the important part is what happens next. A leopard will bite it, turn it over, paw at it, and eventually walk away. A lion will do the same. There is no obvious way in. The muscles holding the ball closed are powerful enough that a large predator simply cannot lever it open. 80 million years of evolution produced a defense that large carnivores could not solve. Then a human arrived and picked it up. That's the tragedy in one sentence, and we'll come back to it. First, let's talk about the tongue, because it's arguably even stranger than the armor. A pangolin eats ants and termites, almost nothing else, and an adult can consume enormous quantities of them, potentially tens of millions of insects in a single year. To do that, it has a tongue that can extend up to around 16 inches in the larger species, longer than the animal's entire head and body combined in some cases. Now here's the part that surprises people. A tongue that long has to be anchored somewhere, and there isn't room in the mouth. So it isn't. The pangolin's tongue is rooted deep in the chest cavity, near the pelvis in some species, running back through the body before emerging. It's coated in sticky saliva produced by enormous glands, and it snakes into termite tunnels, collecting insects by the hundreds. And the animal has no teeth, none at all. Instead, it has a muscular stomach containing small stones and keratinous spines that grind the insects up, functioning much like a bird's gizzard. So picture the complete package: an animal with no teeth, wearing fingernail armor that hunts by threading a chest-mounted tongue into the ground. There's more. Pangolins have powerful claws for tearing open termite mounds and digging burrows, and those claws are so long that some species walk on their hind legs with their front limbs curled up, using the tail for balance. They can close their nostrils and ears to keep insects out while feeding. Their sense of smell is exceptional, and their eyesight is poor, because in a life spent nose down in soil, sight is not the sense that matters. Now let's talk about what's happening to them. Pangolin scales are used in some traditional medicine practices. There is no evidence they do anything. They are keratin. Consuming them is, chemically speaking, indistinguishable from chewing your own fingernails. But demand exists, and the meat is also sold as a luxury item in some markets. And that combination has driven a trafficking trade of staggering scale. Over recent decades, estimates of pangolins taken from the wild run into the millions. All 8 species are threatened, several of them critically. And here is where the armor becomes the cruelest detail in the story. The pangolin's entire defensive strategy is to stop moving and roll into a ball. It doesn't flee, it doesn't fight, it waits, sealed, for the threat to give up. Against a leopard, that works. Against a person with a sack, it means the animal has effectively packaged itself for collection. The defense that made it nearly invulnerable for 80 million years is the exact reason it can be picked up off the forest floor without a struggle. They're also biologically fragile in a way that makes recovery slow. Pangolins typically produce 1 offspring at a time. The young ride on the mother's tail for months. They do not breed quickly, which means a population that gets hit hard does not bounce back within a few seasons. And they are notoriously difficult to keep in captivity. Their diet is specialized. They're prone to stress and digestive problems. And captive breeding programs have had limited success. So the usual conservation fallback of maintaining a captive population as insurance is much harder here than it is for other species. There is some good news, and it deserves saying. International trade in pangolins is now banned under CITES, the treaty governing trade in endangered species. Enforcement has increased. Large seizures of trafficked scales are regularly intercepted. Rescue centers in several countries rehabilitate confiscated animals and release them. Awareness has risen substantially from a starting point of nearly 0. And that last part matters more than it sounds. For most of modern history, the pangolin's biggest problem was not that people wanted to hurt it. It was that almost nobody knew it existed. Conservation funding, political pressure, and enforcement resources all flow toward animals the public cares about. The tiger, the elephant, the rhino, all of them benefit from being famous. The pangolin spent decades being trafficked in enormous numbers while remaining, to most of the world, a creature from a made-up bestiary. Which brings us back to that scale on the forest floor. It looks like nothing. A curl of keratin, easy to step over. But it belongs to a lineage that has been walking this planet since before the dinosaurs died. If this one stayed with you, the next episode is about another animal that solved an impossible problem and then met us. That video's on your screen right now, and the full series is linked in the description below. Subscribe to Wild Codex for new wildlife deep dives every week. And tell me in the comments, honestly, had you heard of the pangolin before today? I'm genuinely curious how many people had. I read every reply. See you in the next one.